Hi and welcome back to another Retronaut video. So, what are we going to be doing today? Well, this is my Commodore 64, and if you watch the video which I recorded on New Year's Eve of 2024, you'll know that my Commodore 64 and also my Commodore 128D had power issues. And I'm glad to say I've done a little bit of research since then, and I found that it wasn't quite as disastrous as I had thought. I'd hoped that nothing had really bad happened. Actually, to be honest, the 128D I still haven't actually turned on since then, so that should hopefully be stable. But I think that has a problem with this capacitors in this power supply because of the symptoms that I saw. This machine was slightly different. It will actually turn on. When I tested it on New Year's Eve, it wouldn't turn on because I didn't know the magic trick, you see. And I persevered with it, and I found that I could actually get it to turn on if I did a small fiddle around with its power switch. So I'm going to move you in a little bit closer, and we're going to have a look at this machine now. And it's going to be a very short video today. I think we're just going to basically replace the power supply button. Yeah, let's get you in a little bit closer. I've already taken the screws out of the base of this machine, and I've also taken out the screws for the logic board so we can get straight on with this job. But I'll just show you that it is actually working, although it's problematic, before we actually move on to the next stage and remove the power switch. Okay, this is good, isn't it? We can see things a little bit clearer now. So I should point out before we carry on, I have a new power supply. It's a Keylog, which was very well regarded within the community. This particular model has two power supplies, one for a disk drive, which is this one, and this one for a C64. This couldn't be used with a Commodore 128, at least not the one I have, the D, because that has a power supply built in. So this would be just for use with the C64. Obviously, using this power supply will protect it from overvoltage, which can happen with the original power supply. This would be usable with my Commodore 1541-2 drive, because that has an external power brick, so this can be used with it if I need to. And that would actually protect that drive from overvoltage if that's a problem with its power supplies. But unfortunately, it couldn't be used with the 1541, the original model, because that actually has the power supply built in. Hope that makes sense. So yeah, anyway, I thought it was worth getting these two different options as I had to buy a new power supply anyway. So we'll just put this one out of the way because this is for the disk drive. This one is for the C64. I've already mostly unassembled the machine. So I'm going to put the top of the case over here for a second. And we'll lift this out of here. And then we'll put that down. And I'll put the bottom of the case out the way. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this around so we can use it for diagnosing the machine, because I need to see the LED. So let's just put this here. And the red lead needs to be pointing outwards. So let me just put that in. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. And I'm going to plug in the power supply. It's currently off, just checking. Yeah. And we need to plug in the video cable as well. So let me get the video cable. Seems to have dropped behind for some reason. Okay, and I checked earlier and it's actually this port for the video. There we are, and we're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to show you the problem. The machine does work, but the switch is the problem. So let's turn it on, the monitor. Yep, I can hear the high voltage, and now I'm going to turn on the machine. And if you look at the LED here, nothing's going on, as you can see. It's not working. But if I move the power switch down ever so slightly, see if I can get this to turn on. I'll try not to obscure it for you. There you go. LED comes on, machine is working. So my boohoo video from New Year's Eve was, well, I mean, it was justified because at the time I didn't know that that was the issue. Maybe I should have persevered with it a little bit more, and I would have found out that that was actually the case. So the good news is the machine definitely works. I've tested it off camera with the keyboard plugged in, and I was actually trying to use it again to load up Wasteland. But unfortunately, both of my disk drives are actually broken as well. The 1541, the original model, and my 1541-2 both have problems. So we'll be looking at those in future videos. And in fact, this might actually be a bit of a mini series where we do that. So what we're going to do today, we're just going to fix this problem, and we're just going to put a new switch in. But before we do that, I think what I'll do is I'll check that it doesn't have a dry solder joint, because I don't want to go through the potential trauma of removing the switch if in fact it's just a dry solder joint. So let's just move over to the repair area, and let's just reflow the pads for the switch, because you never know, it may be as simple as just a dry solder joint there, and that will actually fix the problem. Okay, let's get this switch reflowed. Actually, before I do that, let me point something out to you. This is the bottom half of the case. And you're actually seeing this area here and this area here, they match up. When I took the logic board off, this standoff here actually snapped off at its base. This is one of the big problems with this case. It was designed to a cost, and it should really have metal inserts here or something like that to make it a bit more robust, and it doesn't. So over time, these standoffs break. I got this and I glued it back on, and well, it's the type of glue that will actually melt the plastic somewhat, and I managed to push this in because the actual circular part of it had cracked. I'm not sure if you can see that on camera, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's an old case, so what I might do in the future is get a new one, but the only thing is this is actually in really good condition apart from this, but yeah, it's old, so it's probably going to fail over time. Right then, so let's just put this out of the way. I've got my soldering iron here, ready to go. Unfortunately, I don't have any way right now of having two cameras. I can't afford to have a second camera, not in 4K. So for now, I've opted for a top-down view. This is the first time I've actually used a top-down view in any of my videos, and I bought a new camera boom to do this. So it's interesting. I've got to try and avoid getting my head in camera. There's my bald head. So I've actually put the camera a little bit further back, pointing this way towards the PCB, and hopefully that will mean that I won't get my head in frame and block your view of actually what I'm trying to do. On the flip side, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for me because I'm going to be a little bit removed from what I'm trying to work on. So anyway, this is where the switch is. It has this loose action, as I said. It gets very stiff sometimes, like just then. It was very hard to flip up. And then once I flipped it up, it was then very loose and easy to do it. So yeah, I think it's on its last legs, this switch. I've got the replacement here. New old stock, nice and clicky and positive. So we'll do this reflow test, and then hopefully it'll work. But if it doesn't, then we'll come back and we'll put this new switch in. Okay, so I'm just going to turn on my power supply. Turn on my soldering iron. There we are, that's it starting up, and it's going up to temperature 345 degrees. Just wait a second, and let's put a tiny bit of flux on here just to help these. So these are the 6 pads here. I'm not going to put a lot, just want to give it a little bit of flux so that it just flows a bit better when it melts. There we are. And the other thing I'll have to get in the future as well is some kind of ventilation system, because this flux produces quite a lot of smoke, which I understand isn't that good for you. So yeah, another thing to put on the list of things I need to get, in this case for my safety, my health. Okay, so I've got my magnifying glasses on, and yep, that's good. I'm not blocking your view. So let's just try and reflow these. So I'm just watching, there we are, it went molten. Then I take it off. I'm just looking for the solder to go molten. This one's taking a while longer. There we are. There we go. Yep, that one molten. Same here. And now the last one. And there we go. That's all 6 of them. I'm not going to try and take off the flux because at the end of the day, if this hasn't been a fix, I'll be wasting my time because I'll obviously have to desolder these in a second if it doesn't work. Anyway, let's get it back over to the other table and we'll test this out and we'll see if that's a fix. Okay, so hopefully that's fixed the problem. Let's get it back on the table and we'll get the LED plug back in. Yeah, that looks okay. Let's plug the video back in. There we are. And now the power supply. Yeah. Let's make sure it's turned off before I plug it in. Okay, let's see if that reflowing of the joints has actually fixed anything. Fingers crossed. Yeah, if you look there at the LED, nothing. And I'm sure obviously if I do the switch fiddle again, let's do the fiddle, it comes back on. So it doesn't look like it was the joints. They seem to be perfectly fine. You know, when I looked at them, they looked okay. So it's worth a try, you know. So anyway, onwards and upwards, let's get that switch replaced. Okay, let's get it back over to the bench. Just turn it off and plug it again. Okay, let's get it back over there. So today I'm using a piece of equipment I haven't used on the channel before, and I must admit I've had not a great experience with it. It's what I would describe as a cheap and cheerful desoldering gun, and it's cheap and not particularly cheerful because I find it just gets blocked constantly. And I don't know if that's user error or if it's just the hardware. But anyway, it's the obvious choice today, so let's try using it. I'm going to put a tiny bit of flux again. I don't really want to waste too much flux because we're just removing some solder. But it did actually reflow quite nicely earlier, so I'm hoping that it's going to come out relatively easily. There we are. So, bear with me on this. This may take a while and you may hear some cursing, depending on how well it goes and how easy it actually does what it's meant to do. So let's see how it goes. So, on the pin, wait for it to go molten. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. It seemed to do something anyway. And this one. That was actually quite good, that one. That one wasn't so good. I'll come back to it. Okay, it's removed quite a lot, so let me just turn this off. Got a fan, a cooling fan, which is a little bit noisy, so let's just put that here. Make sure it sits on there. Let me just do a quick inspection. They've all mostly lost their solder, but the ones on the ends still seem to have a lot. Looking on top, yeah, the two at the end here, they've lost all their solder. And I can see that on the top here, the other 4 still have a lot of solder on the top surface. So what I'm going to do now, because I don't think this desoldering gun is going to get to these. Let me just try and get this so you can see this. I'm going to get some soldering wick, and we're going to use the soldering iron to try and suck up the rest of that solder. Because yeah, it didn't do too bad a job, to be fair to it. it actually did suck out everything that it could actually get suction to. But there is some solder left on the top side here, and yeah, it's not going to get to that. So let me have a look in my little box of soldering equipment. Just need to find some solder wick. It's going to be quite awkward this, because I have to get this in here, and then, you know, as it sucks up the solder, I will then have to cut off pieces of it. Yeah, that's sucked up some. Now for this middle one. Oh, that didn't work at all. Let's try again. Yeah, I'm just not getting to that. Let's try swapping it around so I get a different viewpoint. Could be that it's just leaching away the heat up the pin, because the pin's actually pretty massive. Okay, let's try and get this in there. There we are. Yeah, it could be old solder. So I think what I might do is put some flux on it on this side, just to try and make that flow, because it just doesn't seem to want to flow. Do the same here. There's a huge old blob. And I'll just put a little bit of new solder just to try and help it to flow. Once I get some of this on there, it will help the party get started and actually get this out. What that did is the solder then sucked into the hole, so I may actually pop this around and try and suck it out from the other side. Let's just try some solder wick on it first. Ooh, that looked pretty good. Yeah, that sucked up a lot of it. Yeah, that was pretty good. That did a good amount. There it's going in to the wick. Yeah, that's cleared the hole. Now this hole here, this has got massive amounts of lead on it, actually. Massive amounts of solder, I should say. That's fine. Okay. Let's try using the gun again. So these last two holes here, they're the problem. Very close to the actual body of the switch. The solder has gone into these holes a bit. So actually what I'll do is I'll just put a little bit of extra solder there so I can get the suction on it. Okay, let's see how it goes. It's up to temperature. That got that. That got that. And then let's see about this last one. Yeah, I think that got that. Okay, let me have a look at that, see if I can get it to come out. Otherwise, why isn't it coming out? Is there something holding it in place? Oh yeah, of course there is. There's these two guys here. Well, I've got to say, this is certainly a learning experience. I haven't done anything like this before. Such a quite heavily pinned device, you know, it does seem to wick away the heat really quickly. There we go. Aha. Finally. Oh, wow, that's hot. Whew. Hey. Obviously the heat has gone up these pins, which were anchoring it into the board, and gone into the body of the switch. And oh, yeah, that is really hot. That's the problem. It was sucking up the heat from the soldering iron into this metal switch body here, which is, yeah, that was tricky to remove. So is it still usable in any way? No, it still rocks. Yeah. Okay, well, anyway, let's get the new one in. And this is the new one. Let's just do a little bit of cleanup first. I'm just going to turn off the soldering iron for a second. Just want to get this area a bit clean. Nice. We'll do the same on the other side. There we are. I think we're ready to go, putting in the new switch. So let's just get that in position. I've got some blue tack. Smurf gold, as Mark Fix's stuff would call it. So let's get that held in position with some blue tack. So hopefully I should just be able to bridge. Let's get in position first. There we are. Now I should be able to create a nice bridge and put it across here to just hold this nicely in position. There we are. Fantastic. Okay. Soldering iron goes back on. Wait a very short time for it to go back up to temperature. Here we go. Anchor points first. There we are, that's sunk in. Okay, so the 2 anchor points are done. Now for the actual pins. Pin 1, second pin, third, lovely. Number 5, pin number 6, pin number 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. There we go. Okay, let's get a bit of alcohol on it and then we'll just cotton swab it a bit. Just get it a little bit cleaner and then we'll give it a test. See if our handiwork has worked. There we are, just get that off. Yeah, there we are, that's fine. Okay, I think we're ready to test. Let's take it over to the other bench and try powering it up. Okay, fingers crossed that that works. It's certainly in a good position. The switch feels nice and positive, so let's get the video connector connected up. Get the LED connected up so we can see it more easily. That's not the right one. Where's the... That's actually the floppy drive connector. There we go. That's the correct one. Let's turn it off. Okay, turn on the monitor. So, there's the LED. Let's see what happens this time. Ah, look at that. So much nicer. Straight on, no having to do the magic touch on it. So, yeah, it's a very, very simple repair, but it was very necessary. Without that being done, the machine was basically broken. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm very happy that that's actually worked. Actually, I was going to wrap up the video there, but it occurs to me we've got the machine apart, so there's an opportunity at this point to, let's turn it off, to put some heat sinks on. That will obviously help future-proof it. There are varying opinions out there on whether heat sinks actually do that much for the machine. My own opinion is it can't harm. So yeah, I don't think it can harm. I can't see why it would cause an issue. If anything is going to be positive. Commodore did actually put heat sinks on, well, they put one heatsink on the VIC-2 with the graphics chip, and in later revisions they actually put an RF shield over here, and that actually has tabs that touch on some of the actual chips. So if Commodore started doing that at some point, it probably suggests that it is actually a good idea to do it. So let's just move it back over to the bench one more time. We'll put some heat sinks off, and then I think we can put this machine together. Okay, so I've got my little box here of heat sinks, and I've already pre-selected 3 that I'm going to put on. I may actually put a couple more on, just for the CIAs. So these can go on the CIAs, which are over here. Then I've got these longer ones, which are going to go on the SID here, the PLA here, and the CPU here. There we are. So that should be okay. And then I can just put these 2 over here onto the CIAs. And the only reason for that is that I know that these fail. I've seen numerous videos where they've been repaired, and I just think they need protection. Why not? We've got the pads here, so we may as well protect them. So these heat sinks, they actually do have thermal pads here, which are a little bit thin, I think, but they should do the job. They're specifically for these, I think. Yeah, they are. So we'll be using those. And then for these ones, we don't actually have specific pads that it came with. I've got this stuff. Okay, so this is pretty generic, I think. Definitely don't have a heatsink that's long and thin like that. So we'll use that for these. I'll just cut off a piece to actually make it the right size. Okay, got that ready. That's ready as well. The VIC-2 is in a can, but that can does actually have some thermal paste underneath here. So I'm just going to try and show that to you. I've actually opened this already and cleaned it. So it does require a bit of a screwdriver action to get it, to wedge it open. There we go. Yeah, so you see this copper, what would you call it? I don't know, flap or something. It goes up against the VIC-2 and transmits the heat from the VIC-2 into the top of this case. And then obviously that is then intended to carry away the heat. Now the paste is very old, which is why I've cleaned it off with some alcohol already. I don't think that would be particularly interesting to see on camera. But what we need to do now is put a little bit more thermal paste and then put this back on basically, and then hope that the VIC-2 lasts for many years to come. So let me just get some thermal paste. This is Arctic, which is, you know, used on modern PCs, so definitely should be good enough for this. Let's just put this on here. There we are. Should be enough. So let's just use this to spread it out a bit. There we are. That should be good, I think. And hopefully that will now give us a better thermal performance on this heat spreader can. Let's just put this back on. It has to go into like 2 little notches there, and then it just pops down like that. Now hopefully that's making contact. Next, let's put these on, the CIAs. For those with OCD, you may want to look away because I've got a feeling this is actually quite good tape, and it will quite possibly squidge out the sides a little bit. And so if you want it to be super neat, you may not see that. Just wiggle that down. Nice, that's good. As I said, it squidges out the side a bit, but that's okay. Main thing is that it actually functions right. And now put it into position. There we are. And I'm OCD enough to actually align these, although they're not put, there we are. That looks pretty neat. That looks pretty good. Okay, off camera, I'm just going to put the pads on these. It's not very exciting watching it, so let's just do that off camera quickly. Okay, I'm really glad I didn't do that on camera because that was fiddly as heck. Very thin tape, black, and it's about, oh, I don't know, 0.5 millimeter thick, and it's difficult to get the backing tape off the back, and it's difficult to get it off the front. Yeah, horrible. Anyway, got it done. So let's put the tape, put the heatsink here onto the SID. I'll keep that a little bit protected from higher temps, and I hope that doesn't have any sort of issues with the keyboard. That'll be horrible. But yeah, that's good. Now for the PLA, another chip that's famous for going bad. So let's just get that on. There we are. Oops. There we go. Now, obviously, in these chips, the actual microchip is dead in the center. And that's the main thing that you need to get the heatsink over. The rest of it is just connecting wires, basically. That's why, you know, I put these on here, and these should be perfectly fine. It's a long package, but the as I said, the actual main action is right in the center. If you use a thermal camera, I'm pretty sure that's what you would see. You would see a hot spot in the center there, and then these parts of the chips would actually be relatively cool. So that's the most important part of the chip to actually get the heatsink onto. And finally, one for the 6502, which is the CPU, or is it 6510? Oh yeah, that went on quite nicely. They're all adhering quite nicely, actually. Obviously, I can feel that. I'm just trying to move them around, and you can see, yeah, quite nicely. These are a bit more squidgy, but they're on fine. There we go. Heatsink's on. Okay, well, that actually went pretty well. Obviously, it wasn't very complex, but any kind of, you know, when you're removing something from a logic board, it can go wrong. It's the first time I've actually taken off something as heavy duty as the switch on this. And yeah, it's quite a chunky monkey item to remove, actually, because the legs on the pins that connected to the board are pretty heavy duty. It's intended to be strong because obviously you're putting some pressure on the switch every time you push it. So it's actually designed to be pretty robust. And because of that, it just absorbs the heat and can make it quite difficult to remove. So the main thing I had to be actually was just patient. I used the solder gun to try and suck the solder from the underside of the board. But that proved to be, it wasn't the, there wasn't the entire task done, because then you still had blobs of solder on the top of the board. And, obviously it doesn't matter how much it sucked from the bottom, it just wasn't going to pull that through. So then I obviously had to use solder wick to get rid of that. I've actually tested this off camera and it works really well. Well, as we saw with the board out, but obviously we've just put it back together. You never know, something might have gone wrong. And talking about things going wrong, the section earlier where we actually tested the board after the switch was fixed, that didn't go quite as to plan as I'd hoped it had. I mean, the test was perfectly fine. But anyway, I recorded a little bit of video to just show you what went wrong at that point. Yeah. So in the section of this video where I tested the switch, we had the machine set up here and I turned it on and you saw the monitor light up with the blue screen of the C64. I then went for a break, had some food, and I came back later and I heard this really weird whining noise. I'm going to just put my microphone here so you can hopefully hear it a bit more clearly. And listen to the way it sounds when I turn it off. It's really bizarre. It's weird, isn't it? Almost sounds like a hard drive powering down, like something spinning. So if you know what that sound is, if that's diagnostic to you, please make a comment and I'll see what I can do about it. So yeah, my 1084S monitor's gone kaput. If you've been watching this series, I'm calling it a series because, well, let me put this down and let me just grab the inspiration for all of these shenanigans that are going on. On New Year's Eve last year, 2024, I had set myself the goal of playing Wasteland. There's a video that explains this. I'll link to that up here. And I hadn't actually used my Commodore 64 in quite a long time, or my Commodore 128D, and I just thought that they were going to work. So I set them up on my table with a plan that they would, form part of a sort of permanent display of machines, going from the older machines of the front of the cabin, going to the newer machines in this area. And that's not quite worked out yet. But what I actually found was the 128D didn't work. There was a problem with that, and my Commodore 64 didn't work, and that's what we've been looking at and fixing today. I also found that when I actually got my Commodore 64 out and tried it with my 1541-2 disk drive, that disk drive didn't work because I couldn't actually format any disks, that's quite weird, and I'm really worried that the write head has gone on that, but that'll have to wait for further testing. And I then also thought, well, that's okay, because I bought a 1541, the original model, relatively recently at the Zap Live event last year. Never actually got to use it. And of course, with the cabin now, it's much easier to test things like that. And I tried that, and that doesn't work either. So really, I mean, pretty much everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong so far. The only good news is that my Commodore 64 only actually had a problem with the power switch. And obviously that's now inspired me to buy a replacement power supply for it, just to make sure it doesn't get exploded by the old one in the future. And I was discussing this with a friend today, and I said, I feel a little bit like Sisyphus, I'm pushing the boulders up the hill, and as soon as I get the boulder to the top, it rolls back down again. Because, all I wanted to do was play an old Commodore 64 disk drive based game on a Commodore 64 128, but yeah, I'm no closer to it at this point. Now, obviously, at this point, I have no idea what's wrong with the 1084. It's literally happened. It just happened last night when I was recording that section of the video. And it's really disappointing because it's actually been a fantastic monitor to use with both the Commodore 128D and the Commodore 64. I've had it for about a year and a bit. And in that time, I've noticed every now and again there's a bit of a flicker on the screen. So my massive hope is that it's just a capacitor issue. The capacitors are a bit tired in it, and it just needs to be opened up carefully, obviously, and the capacitor is replaced probably in the power supply area, because right now when you turn it on, it makes that really weird whining noise. And I thought that might be a coil problem. I've heard that they make a whine. There's the phrase coil whine. But the thing is, when you actually turn it on, there's no LED light anymore. So to me, that indicates that maybe there's a problem with the power supply, which is why the whole thing just doesn't work anymore. So yeah, that's another thing to put on my list of things to fix. Not sure if I'll do it myself. If I can find a person who can repair monitors within a reasonable range, then I may give that task to them, or potentially I could try fixing it myself. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then please click on the like button, because that makes sure that it goes out to other people in the community. And if you've only come to the channel for the first time today and you enjoyed this video, then please click on the subscribe button, and of course the bell button as well, to make sure that you get notified about other videos that we produce in the future. The next video in this series, it's a loose series about trying to get the machine back on its feet. It's kind of appeared out of thin air, really, is to try and get, I think, the 1541 disk drive working. I'm not sure I'm necessarily going to do that straight away. There's another machine I want to look at least take a cursory look. Got quite a few pans on the fire at the moment, so yeah, we'll see how soon I can get around to that, but that should be interesting. Anyway, until then, have a good day, and I'll see you next time.